He didn't save a planet, he taught an alien queen how to love asterisk. The unexpected visitor welcome to HFY Sci-Fi Fantasy Time, where universes collide and destiny is forged. The morning started like any other for Jake Morrison, a 32-year-old mechanic, living in a small cabin outside Denver. He was fixing his old pickup truck when the sky turned purple above him. The air crackled with energy that made his hair stand on end. Then she fell from the heavens, not crashed, not landed, but fell like a shooting star wrapped in silver light. Jake dropped his wrench and ran toward the impact site behind his workshop. What he found changed everything he thought he knew about the universe. She lay unconscious in a crater of glowing earth, her skin shimmering with an otherworldly blue tint. Her hair was white as starlight, and strange symbols glowed faintly along her arms. She wore what looked like armor made of liquid metal that moved and shifted like it was alive. Most striking were her eyes when they finally opened, deep violet. Pools that seemed to hold the wisdom of galaxies. Jake had always been the practical type. He fixed engines, not aliens. But something about her vulnerability called to him. He carefully lifted her from the crater, surprised by how light she felt despite her tall frame. Her skin was warm, but hummed with energy that made his fingertips tingle. Back in his cabin, he laid her on his couch and waited. She was breathing, though slower than a human would. Her chest rose and fell with mechanical precision, like everything about her was calculated. Jake made coffee and watched over her, wondering if he should call someone. But who would believe him? And something told him she might be in danger if the wrong people found out. When she woke, her eyes locked onto his with an intensity that made him forget how to breathe. She sat up slowly, studying everything around her with the curiosity of someone seeing the world for the first time. Her gaze lingered on the morning sunlight streaming through his window, the dust motes dancing in the golden beams. "Where am I?" she asked, her voice like music, played on instruments he'd never heard. "Earth," Jake replied simply. "Colorado, to be specific. You crashed in my backyard." She tilted her head, processing this information. "I am Zara. I am what you would call royalty among my people, the luminary." "I was not supposed to be here." Jake raised an eyebrow. "Then why are you?" Zara's expression grew troubled. "I was running. My people, they arranged a union for me with a warlord from the Nexus Empire. It would bring peace to our worlds through my sacrifice. But I could not bear the thought of a life without choice, without freedom to feel." She touched her chest, where a soft blue glow pulsed beneath her skin. "We Luminari are taught that emotions are weakness. We are bred to be logical, efficient, perfect. But lately, I have been changing, feeling things I cannot understand. My royal council called it contamination." Jake found himself leaning forward, drawn into her story. "What kind of feelings?" "Loneliness," she whispered. "Curiosity about what lies beyond duty. Wonder about what it means to choose one's own path." She looked at him with those stunning violet eyes. "When I saw your world from orbit, something stirred in me. Your people, they live with such chaos, such beautiful imperfection. I wanted to understand." Jake smiled despite the impossibility of the situation. "Well, you've come to the right place for chaos and imperfection. I'm about as imperfect as humans get." For the first time, Zara's lips curved into something resembling a smile. "You speak with humor, even in strange circumstances. This is foreign to me, but pleasant." As the day wore on, Jake showed her simple human things. How to use the coffee maker, though the caffeine made her skin glow brighter. How to pet his neighbor's cat, which purred at her touch like she was made of catnip. How to laugh at old movies. Though she didn't understand the jokes at first, with each small interaction, something shifted in both of them. Jake saw wonder in her eyes as she discovered ordinary miracles. And Zara felt something she'd never experienced before, a warm contentment that had nothing to do with duty or logic. Neither knew that her people were already searching for their missing queen, or that this chance encounter would reshape both. Their worlds, learning to feel 3 days, had passed since Zara fell into Jake's world, and she was changing in ways that fascinated and terrified her. The strict emotional control that had defined her entire existence was crumbling like a dam, bursting after heavy rain. Jake watched her experience each new sensation with the wonder of a child discovering snow for the first time. This morning, he found her standing in his garden, perfectly still among the tomato plants. Her skin glowed soft blue in the dawn light, and tears traced silver paths down her cheeks. She was crying over a wilted flower. "It was beautiful yesterday," she said when Jake approached. "Now it's dying, and I cannot save it. The pain of watching something precious fade, it's overwhelming." Jake gently touched her shoulder, noting how she leaned into the contact. "That's grief, Zara. It means you cared about something." "My people would say I'm malfunctioning," she whispered. "We're taught that attachment leads to weakness, that caring too much clouds judgment." "Maybe," Jake said, kneeling to show her. "The flower's seeds scattered in the soil. But caring also leads to this: new life, new chances, new hope." Zara knelt beside him, her armor shifting to accommodate the movement. Jake still marveled at how the liquid metal responded to her thoughts and emotions. When she was calm, it flowed like mercury. When she was excited or afraid, it hardened into protective plates. "Teach me more," she said, looking at him with those extraordinary eyes. "About feeling, about being human." Jake spent the morning showing her simple pleasures. The satisfaction of fixing something broken when he let her help repair his truck's engine. Her hands moved with impossible precision, but she gasped with delight when the engine roared to life. The joy of creating something beautiful when she helped him cook breakfast. Though her enhanced senses made her add spices and combinations that shouldn't have worked, but somehow did. "Your people value logic above all else?" Jake asked as they sat on his porch, sharing this surprisingly delicious meal. "Logic, efficiency, order," Zara nodded. "Emotion is seen as a flaw in our design. We're bred to perfect servants of the state, each filling our assigned role without question." "Sounds lonely." She paused, fork halfway to her mouth. "I never thought of it that way. We don't have a word for loneliness in our language." "What about love?" Zara's skin flickered with different hues of blue, like aurora dancing across her surface. "Love is difficult to translate. We have duty, loyalty, obligation. But love as you mean it? The choice to care for someone beyond logic or benefit?" She shook her head. "That concept doesn't exist in our world." Jake felt something twist in his chest. "That's the saddest thing I've ever heard." "Is it?" she asked genuinely. "We have peace, order, purpose. No one suffers from heartbreak or loss because no one expects more than their assigned role. But no one gets to choose their own happiness either." That afternoon, Jake's neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, came by with fresh cookies. She was 83, widowed, and had been baking for everyone in the area since Jake moved in. Zara watched in fascination as the elderly woman fussed over them both, insisting they were too thin and needed more home cooking. "She gains nothing from this kindness," Zara observed after Mrs. Henderson left. "Why does she do it?" "Because it makes her happy," Jake explained. "She lost her husband 5 years ago, and taking care of people helps her feel connected, useful, loved. She chooses to serve others, not because she must, but because she wants to?" "Exactly." Zara was quiet for a long time, processing this concept. That evening, she surprised Jake by attempting to bake cookies for Mrs. Henderson using his grandmother's recipe. The kitchen looked like a flower bomb had exploded, and the first batch came out shaped like abstract art, but her face lit up with joy when she succeeded. "I understand now," she said, frosting still in her hair. "This feeling, this warmth when I do something that might make another happy, this is what you call love?" Jake's heart skipped a beat. "Part of it, yeah. I want to feel more of it," she sighed, stepping closer to him. "Will you teach me?" The question hung in the air between them, loaded with possibilities neither had dared to voice. Jake looked into her eyes and saw not an alien queen, but a woman discovering her own heart for the first time. "Zara," he said softly, "there's something you should know. Teaching someone to love means risking your own heart too." She reached up and touched his face with fingers that hummed with gentle energy. "Then we'll learn together." Outside, neither of them noticed the shooting star that paused in its flight across the sky, hovering just long enough to scan the area before disappearing into the night. The Discovery Jake woke to find Zara standing at the window, her whole body rigid with fear. Her armor had hardened into sharp, protective plates, and her skin pulsed with warning colors he'd never seen before. The coffee mug in her hands cracked from the pressure of her grip. "They're coming," she whispered. Jake rolled out of bed, instantly alert. "Your people?" "A search vessel. They found my trail." Her voice was hollow with dread. "I've been too careless, too emotional. My biosignature is broadcasting feelings they'll recognize as contamination." Through the window, Jake could see what looked like a star growing brighter in the dawn sky. But stars didn't move, and this one was definitely getting closer. His stomach dropped as he realized what this meant for both of them. "How long do we have?" "Hours, maybe less." Zara turned to face him, and Jake saw terror in her eyes. "Jake, you don't understand what they'll do. When they take me back, they'll purge everything I've learned here. Every memory, every feeling, every moment we've shared. They'll erase it all and rebuild me into the perfect royal daughter I was meant to be." The thought hit Jake like a physical blow. "We won't let that happen." "You can't stop them," Zara said, her voice breaking. "They have technology beyond your understanding. And if they discover you've been influencing me, they'll eliminate you as a threat to their genetic purity." Jake had always been a fighter. Growing up poor in Detroit, he'd learned to stand up for himself and protect what mattered. Now, facing impossible odds, that same stubborn determination kicked in. "Then we run." "Where?" "They can track me anywhere on this planet." "Maybe," Jake said, moving to his closet and pulling out a duffel bag. "But I know places they won't think to look. My dad was a survivalist. He taught me how to disappear when I needed to." For the next hour, they packed with desperate efficiency. Jake grabbed his emergency supplies, cash, and weapons. Zara used her technology to disable tracking devices and create false energy signatures. But even as they worked, the alien ship grew brighter in the sky. "There's something else," Zara said as they loaded Jake's truck. "The Royal Council didn't just arrange a marriage for political reasons. They need me to produce an heir with specific genetic markers. My bloodline carries something rare among our people." "What kind of something?" "The ability to feel." She looked at him with eyes full of pain. "I'm not the first of my family to develop emotions, but I am the first they've allowed to live this long. They want to study me, to understand if this trait can be controlled and weaponized." Jake felt sick. "You're not a weapon, Zara. You're a person. Not to them." She climbed into the truck beside him. "To them, I'm a malfunctioning asset that needs to be repaired or replaced." They drove. Intense silence toward the mountains, Jake's mind racing through possibilities. He knew these roads, these hiding places. But against alien technology, would any of it be enough? An hour into their journey, Zara suddenly gasped and doubled over in pain. Her skin flickered between blue and silver, and her armor seemed to fight against itself. "They're trying to activate my compliance protocols," she panted. "Remote neural override. They're attempting to force me to return." Jake pulled over, his hands shaking as he helped her. "How do we stop it?" "You can't. The programming is too deep." She looked up at him with tears streaming down her face. "Jake, I need you to know something before they take me. These days with you, learning to feel, learning to choose, it's been the most real I've ever been. Don't talk like this is over." "I love you," she said, the words coming out in a rush. "I don't fully understand what that means, but I know that every moment with you has been worth whatever punishment awaits me." Jake's heart shattered and soared at the same time. "I love you too, Zara, which is why I'm not giving up." He helped her back into the truck and drove faster, pushing toward a destination he'd hoped never to use. Deep in the Rocky Mountains, his father had built a bunker designed to hide from government satellites. It was a long shot, but it was all they had. As they climbed higher into the mountains, the alien ship became visible even in daylight. It was beautiful and terrifying, like a crystal cathedral floating in the sky. But Jake could see smaller vessels breaking away from it, beginning their search pattern. "They're deploying hunters," Zara said weakly. "Once they lock onto my signal, they'll never stop. Then we make sure they never get the chance," Jake said grimly. He turned onto a barely visible dirt road that wound deeper into the wilderness, toward a hope that felt as fragile as morning frost. Behind them, the hunters spread out across the sky like deadly angels, and ahead lay only uncertainty. But for the first time since learning to feel, Zara had something her people had never given her, someone willing to fight for her freedom, no matter the cost. The bunker was everything Jake's paranoid father had promised it would be. Hidden beneath a natural rock formation, it was invisible to most scanning technology and stocked with enough supplies to last months. But as Jake sealed the heavy door behind them, he knew they were only buying time. Zara collapsed onto the symbol. Caught, her body racked with spasms as her people's override signals grew stronger. "They're close," she gasped. "The neural pressure is increasing. Soon I won't be able to resist." Jake knelt beside her, taking her hand. Even through her pain, her skin hummed with that gentle energy he'd grown to love. "Tell me how to help." "You can't," she whispered. "The compliance protocols are hardwired into my brain. They're designed to override any external influence and force me to return to my designated role." "What if we could disrupt the signal?" Zara's eyes flickered with hope and dimmed. "The transmission is quantum encrypted. Your technology couldn't even detect it, let alone block it." Jake was quiet for a moment, thinking. His father had been crazy in many ways, but he'd also been brilliant. This bunker wasn't just a hiding place. It was a fortress designed to protect against threats, both terrestrial and otherwise. Dad always said the greatest weapon against advanced technology was primitive thinking, Jake murmured, moving to an old metal cabinet. "Sometimes the simplest solutions are the ones they never see coming." He pulled out a collection of copper, wire, magnets, and what looked like scrap metal. "Your people think in terms of advanced quantum communications, right? They'd never expect someone to fight back with basic electromagnetic principles." "Jake, what are you doing?" "Building a Faraday cage," he said, already starting to work. "It's 19th century technology. If I can generate enough electromagnetic interference, it might disrupt their signal just long enough for you to break free from the programming." Zara watched him work with growing amazement. His hands moved with the same precision she'd admired when he fixed his truck, but now he was fighting for her freedom with nothing but wire and determination. "This is impossible," she said. "Your primitive technology against quantum neural networks?" "Maybe." Jake grinned. sweat beading on his forehead as he twisted copper into complex patterns. But impossible is just another word for something nobody's tried yet. Outside, they could hear the hunters drawing closer. The sound was like wind chimes made of glass and starlight, beautiful and terrifying. Through the bunker's small periscope, Jake could see them floating between the trees, there, forms shifting like liquid mercury. "They're scanning," Zara said, her voice tight with pain. "I can feel their probes touching my mind. They'll find us soon." Jake finished his improvised device and connected it to the bunker's power supply. "When I turn this on, it's going to hurt. The electromagnetic field will disrupt everything, including whatever they're using to control you." "Do it," Zara said through gritted teeth. "I'd rather die free than live as their puppet." Jake threw the switch. The bunker filled with a high-pitched whine, and every piece of electronic equipment went dead. But more importantly, Zara's scream of agony cut off abruptly. For a moment, she lay perfectly still. Then she opened her eyes, and Jake saw something he'd never seen before. Pure, defiant rage. "I can think clearly," she said, sitting up. "The override signal is blocked. I can feel my own thoughts again. How long will it last? Not long. They'll adapt, find a way around your interference." She looked at him with fierce determination. "But long enough for me to do something they'll never expect." "What?" "I'm going to surrender." Jake's blood ran cold. "Like hell you are." "Listen to me," Zara said, standing and taking his hands. "I've been running from who I am, from my responsibilities. But I'm a queen, Jake, and queens don't abandon their people. Your people want to erase everything you've become. Some of them, yes, but others might be ready to change. You've shown me that emotions aren't weakness. They're strength. They're what make life worth living." Her eyes blazed with purpose. "If I go back as myself, if I show them what I've learned, maybe I can start a revolution." Jake felt tears he didn't know he was capable of burning his eyes. "You could die trying. I could die running too. But at least this way, I die for something that matters." She cupped his face in her hands. "You taught me to choose, Jake. This is my choice." The whine of his electromagnetic device was getting weaker. Whatever power source his father had installed was running down. Soon, the hunters would be able to track them again. "If you're going to do this," Jake said, "you're not going alone." "Jake, no. They'll kill you just for being human." "Maybe. Or maybe they'll see what I see when I look at you. Someone worth changing the entire universe for." Zara stared at him in shock. "You would risk everything for me?" "I already am," Jake said simply. "The moment I decided to love you, I chose to risk everything." The electromagnetic field failed just as the first hunter appeared at the bunker's entrance. It flowed like liquid starlight, taking the shape of a tall, graceful figure that could have been Zara's sibling. When it spoke, its voice was like crystal bells. "Princess Zara, you will return with us now." Zara stepped forward, her armor flowing back into its liquid form. But instead of the compliance they expected, she stood tall and proud. "I am Queen Zara, and I will return on my own terms." The hunter tilted its head. "You have been contaminated by primitive influences. You will be cleansed." "I have been awakened by love," Zara replied, "and I will not be silenced." Jake stepped up beside her, his heart hammering but his resolve. "Steady. She's not going anywhere without me." The hunter's form shifted, becoming more solid, more threatening. "The human will be eliminated." "Try it," Zara said, her skin beginning to glow with power Jake had never seen before. "And learn what happens when someone who has discovered her worth decides to fight." The final confrontation was about to begin. The revolution of hearts. The hunter's form solidified into something beautiful and terrible, like a warrior angel carved from living starlight. But Jake noticed something in its posture, a hesitation that spoke of uncertainty. Even among Zaras, people, apparently, seeing their queen choose love over duty was unprecedented. "Princess Zara," the hunter said again, its voice carrying harmonics that made Jake's bones ache. "You will submit to neural recalibration immediately." "I am no longer the princess you knew," Zara replied, her own voice carrying new authority. "I have learned what it means to feel, to choose, to love, and I will not return to the emptiness you call perfection." More hunters materialized around them, their forms shifting between liquid starlight and solid threat. Jake counted at least 6, each one capable of destroying him with a thought. But he stood his ground beside Zara, drawing strength from her courage. "The human has corrupted your programming," another hunter said. "This will be corrected." "Jake didn't corrupt me," Zara said, her skin beginning to glow with soft blue light. "He liberated me. For the first time in my existence, I understand what it means to be alive." One of the hunters stepped forward, and Jake was surprised to see what looked like curiosity in its features. "Explain this liberation." Zara looked at Jake, then back at her people. "I have felt joy in simple things, the taste of food made with care, the warmth of sunlight on my skin, the satisfaction of creating something beautiful with my own hands." Her voice grew stronger. "I have felt grief for a dying flower and wonder at the sight of new growth. I have learned that pain and pleasure are not weaknesses to be eliminated, but experiences that give meaning to existence." "Emotions lead to chaos," the first hunter said. "This is established fact." "Does it?" Zara challenged. "Jake, show them what you showed me." Jake wasn't sure what she meant at first, and understanding dawned. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the small wooden carving he'd been working on in the evenings. It was a simple thing, a bird in flight, but he'd made it with his own hands while thinking about Zara. "I made this," he said, holding it out. "Not because I had to, not because it serves any logical purpose. I made it because creating something beautiful makes me happy. Because I wanted to give Zara something that came from my heart." The hunters stared at the small carving as if it were a nuclear weapon. Jake realized that in their world of perfect efficiency, the concept of creating something purely for joy was completely alien. "Inefficient," one of them said, but its voice lacked conviction. "Is it?" Zara asked. "This small piece of wood represents hours of Jake's time, his skill, his care. When he gave it to me, I felt something I had never experienced before. Not duty, not obligation, but gratitude freely given. Is the ability to create joy in another being truly inefficient?" The hunters exchanged glances, their forms flickering with uncertainty. Jake realized that Zara was doing something remarkable. She wasn't just defying them. She was teaching them. "You speak of corruption," Zara continued, "but I have never been more myself than I am now. You created me to be a perfect royal daughter, emotionless and obedient. But emotions aren't flaws in the design. They're features you are too afraid to understand." The lead hunter's form stabilized, becoming more solid and somehow more real. "Princess, your words are troubling. They suggest that our entire civilization is built on error." "Not error," Zara said gently. "Fear. Fear of chaos. Fear of losing control. Fear of being hurt. But love requires courage. It requires the willingness to be vulnerable, to care about something more than your own safety." Jake watched in amazement as the hunters began to change. Their rigid, perfect forms started to soften, to show subtle variations that spoke of individuality rather than programmed uniformity. "If we accept your premise," another hunter said slowly, "what becomes of our order, our peace?" "True peace," Jake said, finding his voice, "doesn't come from eliminating all conflict. It comes from choosing to work together despite our differences. from caring enough about each other to find solutions instead of just avoiding problems. Zara stepped forward, addressing her people directly. I have seen what we could become. Not perfect, emotionless beings serving an empire, but individuals choosing to serve each other out of love. Imagine our technology guided not just by logic, but by compassion. Our strength used not to control, but to protect. Our wisdom shared not from duty, but from joy in teaching. The transformation in the hunters was remarkable. Where once they had been identical, now Jake could see subtle differences. One stood with less rigid posture. Another's form flickered with what could only be described as curiosity. A third actually took a step closer to examine the wooden carving more carefully. This would mean revolution, the lead hunter said. The complete restructuring of everything we are. Yes, Zara said without hesitation, and I will lead it. The silence stretched for what felt like forever. Then, slowly, the lead hunter began to change. Its form solidified into something more like Zara's people, but with individual characteristics Jake hadn't seen before. When it spoke again, its voice carried new warmth. Then we choose to follow, it said. Not because we must, but because we believe in what you've shown us. One by one, the other hunters transformed as well, each becoming more individual, more real. Jake realized he was witnessing the birth of something unprecedented, an alien species learning to feel. What happens now? Jake asked. Zara turned to him, her eyes bright with tears of joy. Now we go home, together, and we teach an entire civilization what you taught me. Will they accept a human among them? The lead hunter, now clearly an individual, rather than a drone, smiled. It was the first expression Jake had seen from any of them. You are the proof that love can bridge any gap. If we are to learn about emotions, who better to teach us than the one who awakened them in our queen? As they prepared to leave Earth, Jake took one last look at his simple cabin, his ordinary life. Then he looked at Zara, glowing with purpose and love, and realized he was trading ordinary for extraordinary. Ready? She asked, taking his hand. With you? Jake smiled. I'm ready for anything. Together, they stepped into the light, toward a future where an entire civilization would learn what it meant to love. And it all started with one man who chose to care for a stranger who fell from the stars. The end.